Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to those delegates who are joining us after our fantastic 2 panels this morning. Welcome to session 3, which is around HR's role in making optimal use of technology to support and digitally enable the employee experience. And welcome to those who've just joined us on your first session today. All of these sessions from the conference today will be available on YouTube afterwards. So if you haven't managed to catch the other 2 so far, please do free to check them out on YouTube later on. So we've got a fantastic hour of conversation for you this afternoon, joined by some fantastic experts here. Just quickly, who am I? I'm Mock O'Keefe, and I'll be your host this afternoon, though hopefully I won't be doing too much of the talking. I'm the founder of an HR consultancy called the Innovation Beehive. I did spend as someone described it, I don't know helpfully or not, as decades in senior HR roles before I joined the dark side of consulting and founded the Innovation Beehive to accelerate the potential of organizations, teams, brands, leaders, and individuals. We take our inspiration from the world of innovation in Silicon Valley, adopting design thinking and their methodologies and behaviors to solve people challenges in culture, like EVP, employee engagement, leadership, and pure play innovation capability. But that's enough about me. You don't want to hear about me. You want to hear from our fantastic experts. So I'll get a chance now for everyone just to go around in my eyesight, introduce yourselves, say what your role is and where you work. So I'll start off with the introductions, and this time with Marco, who I know is back to back on Zooms today. So Marco, contestant number 1, what's your name? Where'd you come from?
Thank you, Mark. My name is Marco Reick. I am the Director of People for QOOT UK International. We are an investment and hospitality operator, operating restaurants, cafes, etc. around the world, mainly in the Middle East and also some in London. Previously held people director positions at Leon Restaurants, Bill's Restaurants, Black Sheep Coffees, and I grew up at the restaurant group, so I'm somewhat of a hospitality veteran, I suppose.
Great, lovely. And you've been a panelist for us before at the Retail Bulletin, so nice to see you back again, a familiar face.
Thanks, Mark.
Super. And then Abigail, hello. Yeah, and you have to, as well as introducing yourselves and saying where you're from, you also have to talk about the dartboard. I'm sorry, it's a requirement.
I have to. Okay, so this is my mini pub setup. I am actually not that great at darts, but I like to practice. And then on the other side, it's a bit far away, but it is actually a Jack Daniel's thing like you would actually get in a pub with a proper measure. So yeah, and that's kept us having fun during lockdown. I'm Abigail. I'm the Chief People Officer at Stella McCartney. I've been at Stella for 15 years actually. For those of you who don't know, it's a sustainable luxury fashion brand. It's an absolute joy to be involved in people at Stella McCartney because it's such a strong purpose. As a company, we have such strong values. We've got about 700 people globally and 44 directly operated stores all around the world. So that's me.
Great, super, lovely. Thank you very much. Neil, not with the pub behind you, but
no, I'm a little bit jealous. I must admit, I do want a dartboard, and I think I get rid of the optics though, just so that you can get full measures of Jack Daniel's. But that looks like a fantastic kitchen. So I'm Neil Pickering. I'm Industry and Customer Insight Manager at an organisation called Ultimate Kronos Group. So we deliver HR, workforce management, and HR service delivery technology to organisations. Retail is one of our biggest sectors, and globally we have around 50,000 customers. So, and I've been in the technology industry for good, I'd like to say 5 years, but it's 20 plus years. So a proper veteran of technology, and just passionate about, you know, how technology can improve what we're talking about here today, employee engagement, and improve business. So yep, that's me.
Thank you. A veteran and an expert after those decades. Great to have you. Louise, hello. Tell us about yourself.
Hi, Mark. So I'm Louise. I'm Chief People and Culture Officer at Pets at Home, which is a UK pet care business with over 450 stores and veterinary surgery and groomers throughout the UK. I've been here at Pets for 17 years now, celebrated my 17th pet birthday last week, in fact. And I joined here, I've had numerous roles at Pets. I joined as General Legal Counsel and COSEC 17 years ago, moved into the people space back in 2017, and then dropped the legal from my title 2 years ago because wanted to really kind of send out that message to the business on how important culture was for driving our strategy, and also took over our ESG strategy. So we're calling it our Better World Pet Pledge, creating a better world for pets and the people who love them. So I'm delighted to be here today. It's my first time on the panel and it's great to be here.
Lovely, great to see you. I love the fact that you moved from one role into another role. I think that only happens in retail. I was a fragrance buyer at Harrods, so you ended up working in HR. It's a strange journey that we can go through, but wonderfully exciting. Very nice to see you, and thank you for being an essential service and keeping our pets fed and groomed. My dog Chaucer is very happy. John, hello.
Hi, hey Mark. So I'm John Bell. Mark, like you, I have just recently converted to the dark side. So started a small consultancy called AERMID Consulting, and we're focusing on helping people create balance between work and life, and with the shift to hybrid working, what does that mean for people? I spent 20 years in various organizations. Last role was as People Strategy and Culture Director for Bank ABC based in the Middle East. But before that, I worked in organizations such as Tesco Bank, Royal Bank of Scotland, the civil service as well. So I've been involved in lots of different industries, lots of different retail environments, lots of different technology-based environments as well. So that's me.
Well, welcome to the dark side. It's a great place to be. You have many masters, many bosses, and many customers. Excellent. And Melanie, hello, welcome. Tell us.
Hi, Mark. Hi, can you hear me okay?
Perfect.
Great, thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me back again to one of the retail events. So my background is I'm founder of People Change Expertise. And I've also, as you see by the title there, I'm non-exec director at the British Retail Consortium. And prior to running my own business, I did several HR director roles in various sectors. So it feels like, Mark, every time I come and speak at one of these events, I've had a few different clients, gone to a couple of different industries. So just finishing off with a professional services firm called AERMID.
So a great example there of that phenomenal portfolio career. And by the way, I'm loving the coloured, working in innovation. I'm loving the coloured crayons there on the bottom of the screen there. Absolutely, for good ideas, I hope. Fantastic. Lovely, super. Well, thanks so much. As you can see, we've got a fantastic panel here. Louise, if I can come to you first, not because I'm biased, but can I come to you first just to ask you to share, like how, I know you've been working really hard as a business using technology to engage your teams for a while, but during the pandemic, how has technology helped you to really engage and have conversations with your people? And how are you measuring whether it's successful or not just output, how are you measuring the actual impact of it?
So like everybody else, we're no different. Past 12 months, we had to quickly adapt to new ways of working, new methods to engage with our customers, our colleagues, our communities. We play a big part in our communities. But I think, unlike everybody else, before the pandemic, we kind of only just scraped the surface. We were just at the start of that journey. In fact, it was my project for 2020 to implement remote ways of working over digital platforms. So Tika did that in about a week. And it was actually quite remarkable. I mean, the ability of our in-house IT teams to react really quickly and put in place those facilities for home working, for the support office was, absolutely fantastic. And I think, what it did for us, there was a number of different things. So it created immediately a variety of different digital channels. Mm-hmm. It enabled us to work throughout those different channels and create this really amazing connectivity between our colleagues and our customers. And at the start, that was just about reassuring colleagues. They were really quite daunted. You know, this time last year, we just locked down, we were still open. And for them, it was about kind of calming them down and letting them know we were here, we were holding their hands. And I think, you know, as a result of that, we've used different platforms, different types of communications. We've done videos at the start, we were doing daily videos. We've got a platform called SatJam, which is a bit like an intranet. So we've created.
Oh, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Oh, I don't know what happened there. I accidentally pressed it. So, you know, we've created all these different platforms, and I think, you know, there've been some unexpected benefits. So you talked about productivity, and, you know, I think partly that's because through a reduction in traveling and commuting, people are on, you know, obviously teams have got to be careful with that. You've got to make sure that people are getting a break from, you know, all-day teams. And what's great about the whole digital platforms is there are ways in which you can monitor that. You can keep an eye on your teams and make sure that they are getting that downtime. But I think for us, it's that real connectivity with our colleagues, that connectivity back to our vision, our purpose. And we're seeing that through the engagement scores, which have increased. And also, we do measure how connected they feel to our vision and our purpose. And we've actually seen that go on massively over the past 12 months. So I think for me, if I was going to summarize it, I think good comms is kind of like glue. You know, it plays a really big part in keeping those relationships intact, holding them strong. Poor comms causes conflict. It kind of acts like a solvent. You know, it causes relationships to dissolve, really. And technology is kind of been that glue. You know, it's been that glue to kind of keep our relationships together.
Right. I love the idea that you achieved the objective in a week. What a synchronicity of them coming in together. I mean, you talked there about the importance of purpose and how you're measuring the impact and how connected people feel to the purpose. Abigail, Stella, McCartney. I mean, if you look out there, Dior, all these other kind of, you know, luxury brands, you stand out as a business that has a really clear purpose. Partly, I think, you know, because of who your founder is. But I'm interested in terms of how technology has helped, or has it in any way hindered in terms of living that purpose and engaging people in the conversation around how do we keep this alive in everything we do?
Yeah, I think at the beginning, so for us, first of all, we were really quite lucky in a way because we'd implemented really great people tools a few years ago. But one of the kind of things that we did kind of 6 months before lockdown was actually move from basically biannual kind of surveys with people to, you know, bi-weekly surveys. And so it was already sort of in the system that people were answering surveys, and, you know, we're getting good results from that. But I think when we first went into lockdown, you know, suddenly these tools became absolutely critical. And although we were utilizing them in such, you know, positive ways before, talking about values and purpose, all of a sudden it just became sort of like a lifeline in a way. And so, like Louise was saying, we did a lot of content at the very beginning that was kind of focusing people on productivity and making sure that people could be as productive as possible. But then quite a few months in, and based on what people were telling us from the kind of regular surveys, because we were able to ask them obviously very specific questions, we realized quickly that, you know, productivity is not the issue here. We need to give people the opportunity to actually make space in their day and separate out, you know, work from life, because suddenly everything has become so blended. And then it was about, actually, we need to reconnect with our values, and you know, when everything is so uncertain, and there's so much kind of difficult information that you have to also give across the company on an almost daily basis, with everything changing so quickly. You know, the kind of stabilizer was our values. And, you know, we wanted to make sure that we were bringing people back to that and reminding them that we're still, you know, changing the way that the fashion industry works, and, you know, this is a period of time. And I think we did that in a lot of different ways, and it was ultimately, you know, a platform for leaders to be vulnerable, in fact, which was sort of an advantage we didn't set out to plan for. But reading comments continually and being able to very quickly pivot to what's most important to people means that you also have to admit kind of where you are and where things haven't gone very well, or where people need more communication or more support, or we implemented like online therapy sessions as a result of people telling us that they really needed to speak to someone, and so we were very quickly able to kind of answer what people were telling us, but then it was again not just telling people or reminding them of what our values and purpose is, but actually showing through different activities or initiatives.
It sounds like it was about having an authentic conversation,
yeah,
responding to what you were hearing, and the idea of kind of leaders being more vulnerable. Certainly over the last year, we haven't known the answer to the questions that were being asked, and as government guidelines have come out, that Friday afternoon, waiting for number 10, we haven't had all the information as soon as our staff start asking it. So someone in the last session talked about, for values, it's not about laminating it, it's about living it, and so living that through the comms there. And interesting, both Louise and Abigail talked about the idea of productivity. Neil, over the last few years, so much of more of the operational HR activities have been pushed to the front line. Our store colleagues, our store managers, doing more of that. How do you think that HR tech or technology in generally can help our store colleagues engage in more value-added work as opposed to the administrative side of the business?
Yeah, I think very much with what we're doing is we're working across the business. So I mean, every retailer is trying to drive for greater productivity, higher revenues, and all these different things. But it's all about, it's focusing on individuals, it's focusing on people and how we can make them more productive and efficient. And I think very often you'll talk to individuals and say, clearly they're really, really busy, but they're really, really busy often on transactional activity. And everybody in the business wants to feel like they're doing the projects that make a real difference. The ones that are more strategic, the ones that are thinking ahead and driving greater value for the business. So I think the key thing is thinking about, of the transactional things that we do, what could be done by a computer? What could you automate? Because there's technology out there, what we have out there with artificial intelligence and machine learning and all these great things, if it's used in the right way, it's amazing what you can automate. And then just free up time for people to be more strategic, or even free up time to spend more time with customers at the end of the day, doing the most important thing, for retail.
But how do you make the business case for that? People. Because, P&L's a challenge. Some businesses have really struggled in terms of margins this year or turnover. We all know it makes sense that we could automate something and spend more time engaging with our customers. Any tips and advice to the HR colleagues here around how they make the case for that investment when, maybe the P&Ls are a bit more tough this year?
Well, that's probably a case in point, is finding the time to look at where are we wasting time on transactional activity. Just makes that case in point that if you're able to look at how we can reduce the transactional activity and automate things, you'll save money and you'll be able to generate revenue in other areas of the business. So literally it is that doing the analysis over, right, where do we waste time currently? And that can be at a manager level, it can be at a senior exec level, trying to gather information, it can be at an employee level. So we have been expecting the employees since COVID hit to be far more flexible, for us to be flexible of their needs, but also, deal with a demand that we didn't understand from a customer perspective. So we've had so many different variables out there. And the fact of the matter is, organizations that didn't have technology in place to be able to deal with this had a real problem because it was down to manual effort. And with manual effort, it wastes time. And it takes a long time to get things done. You're not agile, you're not resilient, you're not engaging your people. Whereas actually, if you employ technology, you can empower people safely. They're still compliant with what you need them to do. They can take extra shifts when you want them. They can swap shifts with colleagues without having to involve a manager. The manager can stay being focused on the strategy and strategic things for the business. And the ROI is, for technology is proven. There's a recent report by Nucleus looked at, since 2016, it looked at all of their different research that they've done on case studies into workforce management and HR technology, and for workforce management, it was showing that for every dollar spent, organizations were getting $12.24 back.
That's what COOs want to hear, and FD. So you've got it there. Thank you. And that whole piece around, adapting your tools, looking at how you use technology, changing how you might use technology. Marco, I'm just wondering, with multi-site, multi-country, have you had to change and adapt the way that you use technology to engage with your people?
Very much so, yeah. I mean, I think there's probably a thread running through all of this, which is communication to start with, and we simply weren't equipped at the beginning of the pandemic to communicate effectively with every team member in the business, and that obviously immediately became a really urgent matter to be able to communicate with people when we were just lost because there was so much information, or then at times so little information, and it was difficult for people to make sense of a clear message. So the overriding need immediately was communicate, and we simply didn't have the tool to do that. So it again, I think Louise mentioned it at the very beginning, something that would have normally been a project that takes months or however long, it just had to be done. So we just had to get a comms tool in place as quickly as we possibly could, and it had to work as soon as it possibly could. There was no time for a trial. We just had to run with it. That was the first thing. Once we had that, there was one big tick, but then we had to look at, partly because obviously, as you can imagine, the hospitality industry has been really, really hit very hard by the pandemic. So we had to shine a light into every corner of the business and look at costs. And the difficult bit is that, unfortunately, in most businesses, you look at the low-hanging fruit where you can save some money, and some of that may affect employee well-being, where you think, these perks that we offer, is that really right at the current time? Is that all necessary? So we thought, well, let's hang on a second. Before we get the red pen out, let's actually survey our team members and see what they do and what they don't find beneficial and what really turns them on. Because I don't think we'd done the due diligence when these perks were first implemented. So it was actually almost a good excuse to say, right, we need to save money in one way or another, but could we probably do it without causing any pain? So we did that through surveys, and guess what happened? Some of the perks that we were offering didn't mean anything to anyone. They were underused. People didn't see the benefit in them at all. So it was relatively easy to get the red pen out and say, like, you know what, this is just totally unnecessary, and I can't believe that we've been running with this without asking our people in the first place. So we did what any good business would do anyway, and ask people, is this really what you want? But as it happens, we saved quite a bit of money in that process. And we're then able to spend that money, despite all the cost cutting, much more wisely and in ways that mean a lot more to the team members, i.e. healthcare, i.e. mental health hotlines, etc. Something that wasn't on the list prior, but is now and has been implemented, despite the fact that we were going through a period of time where we had to save considerable cost. So technology has really helped insofar as A, we use technology to find out. B, it's enabled us to communicate with people. And then C, some of that technology that we were previously using for the rewards and benefits wasn't as efficient as we thought it would be. So tech has played a big part in all of that. And finally, I suppose one of the biggest changes that we had to make based around technology was from a learning and development point of view. We've always used e-learning, etc., but we were in the process of setting up the QOOT Academy, which was actually meant to be an academy, a physical building where people go to learn with significant investment, as you can imagine. And it was meant to be in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia. and sort of it's the elevation for senior management to go through, like an in-house university kind of thing. And well, COVID has thrown a spanner in the works, because all of a sudden we didn't know when it would be possible to travel again, and let alone back and forth for courses, etc. So the whole thing is now online. We are about to launch. We're a few weeks away from launching, but we had to rethink everything into an online world and keep people engaged in that way. So we had to look at it from very different angles. But I think the end result is probably going to be better, more efficient, and just as engaging, if not more.
I love the idea of using technology to ask those sometimes those difficult questions, understand what's actually valued by people, what they need, responding accordingly, and potentially adapting the way you run things going forward. We've talked about, you know, engaging with the employee, the organization, talking to the employee, having a conversation with the employee. John, I'm interested in your thoughts around that, kind of where that relationship sits. How much is it the role and responsibility of the organization to engage with the employee, and how much is it the role and responsibility of the employee to engage back with the organization?
Yeah, so I think it's an interesting question to explore. So typically, you know, the challenge with engagement, look, if we assume that engagement looks broadly like, does the employee understand what we're trying to do? Do they connect? Do they believe in what we're trying to do? And then as a result, do we get some form of discretionary effort from them? I know there are lots of different ways of thinking about engagement, but let's just use that as a way of thinking about it. The challenge is, you can't just sit the employee down and say, right, I want you to understand more. I want you to believe in this more. And then as a result, I want you to go and do something extra. You can't just sit them down and do that. Typically, the approach that organizations take is to try and create the conditions. That means that their employees do feel that greater connection, and as a result, do want to voluntarily give that little bit more. And certainly, you know, the 20 years that I was responsible for this sort of stuff in organizations, that was very much our focus. The challenge with that is it becomes the organization's problem to go and create high levels of engagement in the workforce. And I'm definitely a huge advocate of all of those programs. A lot of the research that I've done over the years has then kind of left a gap, which is, well, how can we only get the bar to go so high? What's the missing piece? To try and quantify it, some of the work that we've been doing recently suggests about 40% of why you can, 40% of what you can do to influence engagement comes from the organization, and about 30% comes from the employee. What's the difference? Where's the other 30%, by the way, John? Well, we've quite worked that out yet. That's just the unknown. And what we've seen as people, particularly over the last year, have been forced to work in very different environments. How they choose to show up to work has had a massive impact on their levels of engagement and the levels of engagement in the organization. So, you know, some people are kind of predisposed to working at home, some people not so much. And how do you then, as an employee, how do you try and make the best of that situation? And some of the challenges that we see around, you know, how people are create boundaries themselves between work and life, how they connect with others, how flexible they are in their workplace, their approach to how they structure and organize themselves. So some of these personality factors, what we're finding now, feed into the levels of engagement that an individual has, and by them understanding these elements can boost their levels of engagement. So to kind of answer your question, Mark, I think all of the work that organizations typically do around, well, what are the big things we can change? Absolutely, those things need to continue. And the shift that we're starting to see is organizations now starting to help employees understand themselves. How can I boost my own levels of engagement up as well? Hopefully that makes sense.
Super, lovely. Thank you very much. Fascinating. And Melanie, I know, I just want to thank you on behalf of the community as a non-exec director of the British Retail. Good Lord, the work you guys have done over the last year to support the retail community has been amazing. All of us here will have different technology, and there'll be new technology, there'll be more stuff coming in. You know, sometimes HR is accused of being a bit faddy, and we get the latest thing and shiny thing that's in people management, and we run with it. How do we as an HR community make sure that we are keeping abreast of what's coming in terms of technology and available, and then also making sure that we are adapting it and using it in the best way for our business and our people? What are your thoughts on that?
Thanks, Mark. Well, first of all, I will take all your kind words back to the people who have been doing all the work at the BRC. It's a much easier thing sat on the board than it is for those guys that have worked relentlessly after over the last 12 months. So thank you. I will definitely take back that feedback. So in terms of keeping abreast, I guess what we've heard today, you know, already from Abigail, Louise and Marco, you know, there is a lot of technology already out there in organizations. And one of the things that I'm always, you know, privileged position of being able to go into different organizations is they'll say to me, look, I think we need to do this, you know, if we feel we're behind the curve on X, you know, I think I need some kind of technology, you know, to do something. And, you know, part of that is, for me, is always unpacking it. So my first kind of inventory is what have you got already? So what systems, tools have you, you know, technology have you got? Because I'm always quite overwhelmed by how these organizations have got and spent probably a lot, back to Neil and the business case, they probably have gone through at some point during the last few years in buying some sort of technology. And maybe led to believe that, you know, there's something new on the horizon, there's this new app, it's great. And my question to them always is, well, look, what are you trying to do? Let's kind of step back. Let's kind of just explore this. Why do you feel you need the new technology? What is it you're trying to do? Of course, that kind of went big bang last year, didn't it? When, you know, as Marco said, you know, it was like, we just need to be able to engage with our people. And I would say probably 80% of clients already had something. It might not look the sexy of what they read in the latest article of whatever publication, but they did have something. And the other interesting thing of that is that they probably have been using about 20% of the capability of what they had. So another part of me would then kind of explore really with them about, okay, how can we maximize what you've already got? There sometimes is a case of buying something new, but in most organizations, there just isn't the financial budget to do that immediately, unless you're lucky. It's very rare. So, you know, one of the things I try to do is connecting with account managers, right, of these, because at some point they bought this tool. And I do think account managers of these organizations sometimes get off a bit lightly because they kind of buy and sell it in, and then they kind of sometimes move away from it. So, you know, reacquainting them maybe with what the tool is, how it's been updated, what can it offer now? And then really just thinking about, you know, tech. I love tech, everything in my life. If I can use technology, I will, but it is an enabler. So again, I've witnessed where companies will survey, you know, their colleagues, and then spend the next year trying to work out what does all that information tell them. And that creates real issues in the system, as I call it, as well, because people are like, well, you've asked me this, I've told you what's wrong. And back to like Abigail saying, you know, moving away from the position of surveying people maybe annually to maybe pulling back and doing pulse and asking maybe 2 or 3 of the really key questions. And as Marco said as well, you know, listening to what you're, you know, why don't we ask people? Then why don't we listen? And then why don't we respond? And you know, in this sector, you know, the retailers are amazing at doing that for consumers, but sometimes we forget about doing that with our own folk. So for me, look, there's always lots of sexy, exciting technology. I'm not going to say I don't like to look at it and see what it does. But I would say probably, you know, a huge proportion of my time when I speak to clients, it isn't about purchasing that new sexy thing, because it's not necessarily what they need for today.
Great, lovely. Thank you very much. That's very interesting to hear that. You know, with technology, I think we've all got so much more used to using it over the last year. But I'm just wondering, and I think, Louise, you mentioned this. I have to confess, we have a chat in advance of these sessions. So you talked about keeping the personal touch, as you know, and so I wonder whether there's a risk in technology when we're broadcasting out. How have you kept the personal touch? I'd like you to start off and then hear from anyone else on the panel in terms of how you've made sure that you kept the personal touch over the last year whilst maximising the use of technology.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because Neil talked about automation, and you don't necessarily think about automation of enabling you to keep that personal touch. But actually, without automation over the past 12 months, we would have just, well, unbelievably struggled in the HR team. So we haven't taken advantage of the job retention scheme, but we had colleagues who needed a shield. We had colleagues who couldn't necessarily work, you know, in stores because they had, you know, caring responsibilities. So I'm losing my voice. So, you know, we basically offered our own funded caring support leave or shielding leave. So which meant that, you know, on a store by store basis, we had some colleagues in and some colleagues who weren't in. So we automated the whole process from beginning to end. But that then enabled our people team to have the conversations and the personal conversations with those individuals who'd applied. And that just, the impact that had was massive. So not just we automated the process, they had the conversations as they went on leave, but then kept in touch with them. And then just as they were coming back, they picked up the phone to, you know, it was a couple of thousand, and had those conversations. So I think you can use technology in a way that kind of alleviates some pressure points, you know, add that automation, but then it just add value in other areas. And it's just about getting that balance and identifying those opportunities.
Yeah, bot can't have empathy. Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Anyone else thoughts in terms of how you've kept the personal touch whilst using technology?
I'd certainly like to echo what Louise was saying, and Melanie. You know, the fact that you can't implement technology and then free up time and then spend that not with colleagues. That's not the right thing to do. You know, because then you'll have colleagues saying, well, I never see my manager anymore, or I never have that communication. And it's all about people. It's all about good communication, as Marco and everybody has said. So that's absolutely key. You've got to have that vision of what you want to achieve as a business, be open and transparent about it, bring people on the journey with you, and implement technology, if you've got to implement technology, for the right reasons, and do it for a long-term thing, and not think about it as a short-term fix, because then, to Melanie's point, you'll only get the 20% out of it. You won't get the full benefit out of the solution. So no, I perfectly echo those points.
Yeah, over the last year, certainly the focus and the voices around DE&I has become much more elevated and much louder. I'm just wondering, I'm thinking about in our local church where I had to do coaching sessions with octogenarians so they could get into our Sunday Zoom church sessions. I'm just wondering if any of you have any concerns around, from an exclusion or inclusion perspective, how technology impacts on the different communities. In retail, we're blessed that we have people of all ages, all backgrounds, very diverse, working in our restaurants and our stores. Have you had any concerns that actually using technology means that people might feel excluded rather than included?
Certainly, I mean, personally, and in our industry, which is very similar to retail from a workforce makeup, I suppose, you've got people from all ages, but predominantly in hospitality in particular, you'd have lots of young people. So it is actually their expectation. They come into a hospitality job very often as their first job. And it is, if you don't have the technology, it's the other way around. If you don't have the technology, then you have a problem, because it is their expectation that you do, because they're used to having information at their fingertips, and they're used to communication being a constant thing. So it's probably the other way around. So therefore, I'd say from our business and our industry, I don't think it's an issue. If anything, it's exactly the opposite, but that may be different in other businesses. So.
Well, kind of connected, just picking up on the point that Melanie was talking about, having layers of technology. This doesn't quite get to your question around, do we see a difference between different generations, or inclusion or excluding different populations in the workforce. A common theme that we see with our clients is people saying, if you have technology, one, make sure it works. And it's really straightforward for me to use it. And two, don't layer on another piece of tech on top of another piece of tech. So if you want me to connect via Zoom, let's use Zoom. Let's not then go Microsoft Teams, Google Hangouts, Slack, email, sometimes WhatsApp. Can we just have one agreed piece of technology? And one of the things that a lot of our clients are, and I don't know if it's just by chance that we're on Zoom today. By the way, I have no affiliation with Zoom, just putting it out there. One of the things that a lot of our clients talk about, the simplicity of something like Zoom, that then does transcend a lot of the generations in their workforce, is it kind of just does what it says in the tin. You get a link, you click on it, it works. So I think there's a fundamental issue there. I'm not a technology guy, per se, but I think there's a fundamental piece there that as technology becomes more and more important, which it definitely has become over the last year, it also needs to be really, really simple, so that anybody, to your point, Mark, around not wanting to inadvertently exclude people, anybody can just use it. You click the button, it does what it's supposed to, simple, not lots and lots and lots of different layers and be very, very complicated.
I'm just wondering whether we potentially make some assumptions, whether I may have made one there about generations, but I know we were running an innovation session on Miro, developing an employee value proposition for an organization. And I got a note in the chat from somebody saying, I'm colorblind. I have absolutely no idea what's in front of me here. And I sent a note to my colleague who was able to kind of rejig something and slap it onto Zoom within 15 minutes. But I was just like, how could I lose that? I'm just wondering how you keep that D&I at the front of your mind as you make decisions around technology.
I think we're in a situation, aren't we, that where the awareness of these things is increasing all of the time, and we're seeing greater complexity all of the time in managing all of these different things. So yeah, I think the key is having the right technology, isn't it?
Yeah, I just put my hands up.
Not just
said, thank you, we'll get that fixed with you, manage to turn it around. And to Abigail's point, those authentic and open conversations. So, I didn't know that. Let me respond to it. A question's coming here from some of our guests online, so please do keep them coming in if you have any. It's lovely to see them. So do you think your employees would like a practical path to a net zero carbon lifestyle? Do you think it's your job to inspire this journey? And if so, how would you go about this with technology? So who'd like to think about that in terms of, do you think it actually is the role? Abigail, I might look to you as a purpose-driven organization. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. So we set up a Green Leaders Network quite a few years ago, to be honest with you. Obviously, because of the company that we are, and we measure everything to do with our environmental impact, basically. We have to, because that's what we stand for, but also it's become a part of what everyone also wants to do. How has technology helped with that? I mean, ultimately, our Green Leader Network was always it was always global, because we wanted to make sure that every, store and office was represented, but it didn't always work very well. Whereas now, we're so used to now working on Zoom all the time that the network has become much, much stronger. So, and, I think we do, as a brand, of course, inspire people to want to go further. And I think when people join us, they evolve quite a lot anyway, just naturally, because you just learn so much, but also you want to do more when you see the enormity of what we have to do as a human race on this planet. So that's definitely something that we love doing, and it's such an engaging, topic. So I definitely think it's a responsibility of all organizations actually to inspire people to be more sustainable themselves and how they live.
Great, lovely, thank you. Just before I came on this call, I was talking to someone about Bitcoin investments, and they were thinking of pulling their money out of Bitcoin because of the environmental impact that it's actually having. And although they've made some money out of it, they said, I don't think I can be part of this anymore. Maybe I'll go to my NatWest ISA, but I can't be part of this.
Did you
anymore.
put that on Twitter just before you came to this session? Because Bitcoin has dropped quite a bit today. So thanks.
No, I have no affiliations. I just literally read it
Okay.
on a group I'm involved in. That's fascinating there. I think, that whole piece around kind of technology and all of the different types of that are available to us. I'm just wondering how you as individuals, because people have looked to you, whether you're in a CPO role, whether you're in a consultative role, whether you're in a non-exec director role, people have looked to you to sort of say, how do we do this? What do we use? What are the answers? And I'm not sure, I'm making assumptions, but no one has known all the answers and we've been looked to for them over the last year. How have you as individuals coped with that personally? Tech might be very specific, but also throughout the year, how have you coped with personally, sometimes saying, I don't know, I'll have to get back to you? Because I imagine you're all successful people. That's not something you're used to saying. I don't have the answer there. How was it for you?
So I would say that what's been really useful using the technology and going along the same lines as the conversations we've been having is asking people collaboratively to work on what are we trying to solve, what are some of the answers, and getting more braver to be able to say we just don't know. I was reading a study this morning where it was CEOs. They were asking them, what are the burning things that are on your list, and one of them was around, about, I thought it would say, the strategy, the finances and such like, but actually it was about the new ways of working, how will this, and it's overused already, isn't it, hybrid way of working. And they said, it's given them some sleepless nights about, making the right decisions. Yes, you can reduce your office footprint, but, is that the right answer? How much do you reduce it by? All of these kind of things. And I guess, where they found it fascinating was actually using the technology, being able to have maybe some more smaller discussion groups, a bit like what we're having here, although we've got an audience obviously that are watching and listening to what we're saying, but really just asking individuals their views and trying to solve for some of this collaboratively and being honest. And I think, in all the engagement survey stuff I've seen, that authenticity of leaders being able to say, look, we just don't know the answers to these things, but we were going to work together to work through what the answers are, because what we do know is one size doesn't fit all. And I think that kind of personalization, flexible approach will cause us all on this call headaches, I'm sure, but I think if we're even if COVID hadn't hit, I think if we'd stepped back or had 5 minutes to step back, we would see the world was heading in that direction, that being able to put policies in and expecting them to just be right for everyone in for our colleagues is just not the case. I don't think it's just always been about generations. I think it's just the way as individuals nowadays we want to live our life, and we want to be more selective on things that are more appropriate to us.
Super, thank you. Anyone else like to share how it's been okay to say, oh, I don't know, I'll have to come back to you?
I think if anything,
just adding on from what, sorry Marco, do you want to go?
No, you go.
Just adding on from what Melanie said about that authentic leadership piece, which I know is kind of a buzzword, isn't it, at the minute? But I think some people have been more comfortable operating in the grey than others. And you've just had to get yourself comfortable with it if you weren't. the messages that had the most impact of Adele back 12 months ago were the ones where myself and the CEO went on the videos and said, this is what we know now. We don't have all the answers. It might change tomorrow, but we just want you to know we're looking at it. And for our colleagues to know that it was on our agenda, we were looking at it, that just dialed down and dampened, kind of the noise that we were getting on certain issues, when they arose. And just for them to see that authenticity, that, we were human at the end of the day, but we would do our utmost to make sure that we answered the questions for them. And that had the biggest impact on our colleagues.
It's interesting, that whole idea about we are now revealing more about ourselves. We are more human at work using technology. That technology, which actually can sometimes feel, before the unhuman, the robots are going to take over the world. They actually enable us to see into each other's homes and bedrooms and spare bedrooms and gardens. And I was talking to a CEO a couple of weeks ago, and she was saying, depending on who I'm talking to, if I know you, you can see my home. If I don't know you, you will see the wall of my sitting room. And once I get to know you, I will turn it around. How you manage your humanity and your space through technology. Fascinating. Marco, what were you?
Yeah, I was actually, first of all, I'm a big believer in authentic leadership. And yes, it may be an HR buzzword, but actually I've always in any kind of leadership session that I've run, I've always said it's you have to, as a leader, understand the people you work with, and you have to actively go and find out a lot about them. But in return, if you expect fellowship, then you also need to reveal about yourself as an authentic leader. So don't just expect them to give a lot away and tell them about themselves. You need to be able to give. And I think, in a way, inadvertently, the last 12 months have almost made authentic leadership easier, because nobody would have expected anyone to have all of the answers. Nobody in their right mind. And I think if politicians, business leaders, etc., would have been a bit more authentic and humble initially, to said, we're trying to figure it out, then maybe it would have taken the public with them a lot better, because we've created this bipartisan world but actually the authenticity is, and that's my personal view, it's almost a lot easier now, because no one in their right mind expects anyone to have all of the answers. We had situations last November when the furlough scheme was extended. I'd already sent out redundancy letters to people, and 6 hours before it came into place, we were told, actually, furlough comes back. We looked like monkeys, but actually,
you weren't alone. That happened to so many.
No, but it's just, we have been faced with totally unprecedented situations from a leadership point of view, where I think authenticity was the only option, really.
And I wonder whether that authenticity, I think about my father, who was managed by a gentleman called Mr. Chalkley. And I always remember Mr. Chalkley would come for dinner once a year. Mr. Chalkley lived in Egham, Surrey. And I know nothing about him, except that was the name where he lived. And my father always called him Mr. Chalkley, as did my mother. Now, the world has moved on from that, but this levels of personalization, seeing our background, seeing our dogs, seeing our family, how do we keep hold of that? Or should we keep hold of that as we go forward? Is it here to stay? And can technology help us do that?
I think it's certainly changed, hasn't it? There's the realization that you don't need to spend half your life in a car traveling up and down the motorways to make things happen. From a retailer's perspective, knowing that their leadership can visit numerous stores and have numerous conversations, and not just 5 in a week, has transformed everything. So certainly things are going to move backwards in many respects, but a lot of this, thankfully, will stay, and hopefully it will make people more authentic. And as you say, that ability to be more authentic, or willing to be more authentic, has got to be a good thing. So hopefully it does stick around.
And we're doing so much, we're doing almost everything online and with technology now. As we move beyond COVID, do you think, what's your hunch around what things might be done face to face? Will the area manager still be going into the stores? Will it be training, or that you want to pull people together? Where are the interventions where you think actually we'll probably move more back to face-to-face interactions? What are your thoughts, panel?
For me, it's about innovation, because I think that's what's been so hard to replicate virtually in any way, shape or form. So as a creative, company, the innovation side of things and the process of creativity, that's where we're going to bring people together for sure. Everything else, I think, is up for question. I mean, for sure, there can be no doubt now that soft skills are actually not soft skills, they are the skills. And the way that we blend now in the new hybrid work, the real human behind everything, and human leadership, human-centered workplaces, that's definitely here to stay for sure. But yeah, it's innovation where I think it's been lacking in this last year.
Creativity session, super. Anyone else? Any other thoughts around what we might be doing more face-to-face as opposed to remotely?
Without doubt, echoing exactly what Abigail said, moving from a workplace, somewhere you go to 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, 9 to 5, to more of a workspace where you collaborate with people when you have to generate ideas. Meetings and kind of structural stuff just like this can happen pretty well through this kind of medium. And we're seeing a lot of our clients thinking about, okay, well, we've now got this office space. We know that we don't need to have everybody in it all of the time. Therefore, what's its purpose going to be? And the thing that seems to be missing over the last year is, how do I really connect with people when I need to for innovative ideas? So yeah, we would see, I'd put a bet on offices being much more about just collaboration spaces, and then people being much more comfortable doing their own thinking work at home on their own, but coming together for that kind of collaboration.
Lovely, thank
you.
you.
Time will tell.
A few minutes left, but I just want to, I'm going to give you no more than 30 seconds. Something you know now in terms of how you've used technology and how it's impacted your business that you wish you'd known March last year. So I shall go around. I'm going to start with Melanie, if I may. Something you know that you've got no more than 30 seconds, or I'll be in trouble with Karen. You know that you wish you'd known then.
Any shortcuts when you're on Teams and Zoom, so you struggle through like making the screen larger to see, like when people put a slide up which is really little bits on it. So shortcuts, I wish someone could have come out with them first of all, rather than taking 6 months. Great,
lovely practical. I love that, absolutely agree. John?
I'm really proficient with the mute button.
Absolutely, love it. Super. Louise?
How to get good lighting. Always have the window in front of you to get the best lighting. Took me a while to learn that.
Yeah, fantastic. I've had the light shining in your eyes and you're like this with those Amazon lights. Super. Abigail?
Mine is a really personal one, actually, because I was, in our roles, being on screen on Zoom, continually giving quite difficult messages. I just think I wish I'd known at the beginning that just being myself was okay, because that's actually what's been the easiest way to bring people together is actually just, I know we've talked about vulnerability and authenticity, but just being myself. If I'd have known that right at the beginning, I think it would have been easier for me to just relax and it's okay. So yeah, that's mine.
Super, lovely. Neil?
The key is Shift Windows key S, because that means on Zoom you can quickly grab somebody's image and use it for blackmail. So
you're speaking to HR, be careful there.
Oh, sorry, yes. But a Shift Windows key S is really useful. Anyway.
Lovely. And Marco, to see us out, what do you wish you knew?
Do you know what? Honestly, I just simply didn't know enough about technology at the beginning when this all started. I now know that so much amazing technology exists. I've been talking to a colleague about a bot platform that they've just implemented. I'd never heard of it. It's simply amazing. We spoke about automation before. I think this is only the start. Yes, we had to put a lot of stuff in that really works and it's really helped us, but I think it's only the beginning. So because technology is so much better than us HR people know.
Super, great. Thank you so much. Thank you for being very honest and authentic, sharing your experiences, taking time out today. Hopefully, we've all got to know each other a little bit through this technology, but maybe we'll get to know each other better one day in Abigail's kitchen over a Jack Daniels and the dartboard. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you for those who contributed on chat. That ends our session today, but do keep an eye out because there will be another conference coming in October from the Retail Bulletin. But for now, stay safe, be strong, take care, and have a great Easter when it comes. Bye-bye.